first offering we find in the Word is important. In fact, every first in the Word is significant. Over 20 years ago, Robert taught a class, and it was, I think he called it a survey, biblical survey. It basically took us from Genesis to Revelation and hit key points throughout the Word that we needed to understand. And one of the things he shared in this class was the importance of firsts. The first mention of an individual, the first occurrence of some activity in the Word, the first person, place, or thing, basically. He said, always go back and see the first time this thing is mentioned. Well, in looking at offerings, you have to go back to Genesis chapter 4. You know the story, Cain and Abel. Now, Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a cultivator of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord from the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock and from their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his face was gloomy. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why is your face gloomy? If you do well, will your face not be cheerful? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." Now, I don't know about you, but every time I read this passage, there are two things that jump out at me. One is, what was wrong with Cain's offering? And the second one is, if God came up to you and directly spoke to you and said, straighten up, you can fix this, I think I'd listen. This was obviously a different time than what we experience now. I mean, it says God spoke straight to Cain and said these things. Now, I don't know how long they'd been out of the garden by then, but God was still making appearances. And Cain didn't get the message. Now, we know that the produce of the land, the fruit of the land, is an acceptable offering. It says right there in Leviticus, to bring the sheaf from your harvest. So it wasn't because he brought vegetables. My guess is that he brought the vegetables that had been eaten by the cabbage worm or the hornworm or the squash bug. There's a lot of bugs out there. And he kept the best for himself. That was the problem. Well, we know how this all turned out. Cain didn't change his attitude. He didn't bring a better offering. He didn't do all the things he should have done. And much like us, he got in a bind. Hopefully, we don't resort to murder. He did. So basically, Cain didn't bring the best of the first. It may have been first fruits, but it wasn't his best. He didn't repent, he didn't change, and he paid the price. And so did Abel. Now, this is a lesson that once you learn it, you'll never forget it. when Chuck and I were first really coming back into the things of the Spirit in the late 70s, we both knew the Word, we both knew the Lord, but there was a season of time when we first left Texas A&M and moved to Houston that we were really caught up in the pursuit of careers and prosperity and fun, that we didn't actually fall away from the Lord, but we weren't where we needed to be. So when we finally began to make that transition back into a place of submission to the Father and obedience to those things that he was calling us to do, the first thing we realized was we needed to be giving. We needed to be giving our best, our first, our tithe, our offering, all of these things. And we were very faithful, and we began to see how God blessed us because of that submission to his will. Well, along came a bill that we were not expecting. It was time to give. It was the first of the month. And we had a choice. We could give, and give the right amount, our first and our best, or we could pay that bill and still give a little. Well, against our better judgment, we paid the bill and gave the leftovers to God. Yeah. That check didn't bounce just once. It bounced twice, and then it bounced a third time. I've never seen a check bounce that much. And I'm telling you, that got our attention. And I can honestly say, we have never done that again. And God has always taken care of our bills. Now, one thing we did do after that was we stopped using credit cards. And we lived that way for a very long time because we recognized it was a snare. And so we had to get our habits and our money in order. Now, we use credit cards now. I can't get on Amazon without a credit card. Do you remember when Amazon first came out, all they had was books? Now you can get everything. I mean, everything. Really. It's amazing. It's not really a good thing. Now, about the same time that check was bouncing all over Harris County, our pastor shared a little tidbit with me. Now, this pastor, he is an example of a person that God puts in your life to show you the way, to demonstrate faith when you need that demonstration. He was truly a man of faith. His name still is Billy Crosby. I think he's 90-something years old now and still kicking. But he told me, because I was moaning and groaning about money problems, he said, you know, my father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So if I need money, he can sell a steer. There have been lots of times I have asked God to sell a steer, and he has done it every time and provided every need. There were times when all we had to eat was oatmeal, but at least we had something to eat. And trust me, we never starved. And in the book of Psalms, it says, I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. He's not going to leave you destitute or hungry. I remember one time, and I think Chuck has shared this a time or two, when things were slim, we didn't have a lot going on, not much in the pantry, and Chuck was moaning about, eating the same thing over and over again, and I said, I think you're going to be okay, and told him to go look in the mirror, and that he was probably good for a few weeks. He didn't think it was funny. But as we advanced in our understanding and our faith, Firstfruits just became part of our lives. And I don't mean just once a month. We began to realize that Firstfruits is a choice, an offering you give every day. You choose when you wake up in the morning what's first. And are you going to give your best?